This is a Hot Pie Media original.
It's been several years, bigger platform, bigger audience, and so I think the obligation is there again for everyone to hear the story and appreciate every aspect of it. So let me set it up for those that don't know his story. Anthony Graves, with no record of violence, at the age of 26, was wrongfully convicted and incarcerated for 18 years here in the state of Texas before finally being exonerated and released. That's 18 years. If it can get worse, it did. He's a father with 3 children. He was charged with and convicted of murdering a family of 6 people in Somerville, Texas. Despite, it's important to know this, the lack of a motive or any physical evidence connecting him to the crime scene. So instead of physical evidence, the conviction was based upon the testimony of a man by the name of Robert Carter. Robert Carter later admitted that he committed the crime on his own and he was executed. Anthony Graves was twice scheduled for execution by lethal injection. So his exoneration and release, after his exoneration and release, he testified at a Senate subcommittee hearing about the conditions of imprisonment. He's spent 12 years, I think it was, on death row. His conviction was overturned by a federal appeals court, yet he was not released. Think about this, was not released until 4 years later. He was awarded $1.4 million for the time he spent on death row under the Tim Cole Compensation Act. Following this, the prosecutor had sent Graves to prison, was disbarred for withholding evidence in Graves' case and for using false testimony to secure the conviction. He has funded a scholarship for the attorney who worked for his release, and he also has the Anthony Graves Foundation. And he's with me again. Anthony, how are you, man?
Man, I'm great, man. How are you doing?
Fine.
Good to see you again.
Good to see you. I wonder, and I was thinking about this today, I wonder if you are, do you ever think, I don't want to tell my story anymore? I don't want to go back there again?
No, because, when I decide never to tell this story again is when it doesn't my life start not to make sense to me anymore. This story was born from the trauma that I went through, and it was born for me to get out and tell this story so that it puts on our minds the urgency for criminal reform. I mean, that's what this story is for, to remind us of why it's so urgent that we have to reform our criminal system so that it's fair for all of us.
Yeah. So before we go back in time and how horrible life was at that time, I remember. And I want to say it wasn't long after you were exonerated and released, which was bizarre that it took 4 years. You were exonerated and then stayed in prison for 4 more years. Every day that you said, "Why am I still here?" What was the answer?
Well, I mean, it was a situation where they were trying to work out some sort of an agreement, and I was refusing to work out any agreement. My stance was, you're going to kill me or you're going to free me. I'm not going to compromise the truth. So they just continued to go back and forth for 4 more years until finally they had to go head on and admit to the fact that they were wrong and release me.
How many times did you tell your attorney or anyone that would listen, kill me or free me?
Oh, man, for the longest, I hadn't reached that point because, I was so naive to believe that because I'm innocent alone, that would be enough to exonerate me and get me home. But as I started witnessing the games that are played in our system to seek convictions and uphold convictions, then I started seeing the things that was going on around me. I witnessed over 400 men being executed by the state of Texas. And, I kind of make a joke about the fact I never seen anybody come back and complain, right? So I had gotten to that point where this thing became bigger than me. So it was like, okay, are you willing to sacrifice your life for this? In other words, for the truth, are you willing to die? And I made up my mind, yes, I am. Because they're going to free me or they're going to kill me. I'm not going to continue to allow to endorse a failed system by agreeing to something that I did not do just for the sake of going home and living on the cloud of a lie. I'm not going to do that. There's no man that walks this earth, I feel, that can make me do that. Kill me or free me, but let the truth come out. And that was just the way I felt, man.
About the time that your story started to blow up, thankfully, I remember I asked Rick Perry directly the question, and I'm not surprised by his answer. I said, do you think, whether it's during your time as governor or in any time that you've been in elected office in the state of Texas, do you believe the state of Texas has executed an innocent person? And not surprisingly, he said, Jeff, there is no way, not under my watch or any other, the system has too many safeguards. That's just not true. And your answer is what?
Well, I mean, I lost 18 and a half years of my freedom to a system that has all these safeguards. And I was innocent, and I was at home with my family who was there to testify for me, and it did not save my freedom or my life, So for Mr. Perry to say that, I mean, I understand the political climate in this country. And I understand politics, but the reality is we are executing innocent people, and we have not stopped, and we will continue to do so as long as we practice in the death penalty. And even if we just executed one in the past, that's too many, because some family, some mother has lost a loved one, a son, for something he didn't do. So I understand his response, but the reality is we are executing innocent people.
Well, I think you told me at one time, you said, I know that because you tried to kill me, and we didn't just try to kill you once, we tried to kill you twice. Right?
Yes.
Explain that, because I don't think people want to know the story, and we don't know the story. You are told you're going to be executed on X day, and that day came for you twice. Describe those days.
Well, one day, the first time I got the execution date, I was laying in my bunk, reading a book, and two officers approached my cell and said, "Hey, Mr. Graves, put your shirt on. The captain want to see you in the office." So I did as I was told, and they stripped me out and they handcuffed me, shackled me, and they escorted me down to the captain's office. When I got there, the captain was sitting across the desk, and they asked me to sit down. And when I sit down, he told me that the state had just called and decided that on a certain day that they was going to execute me. And he was calling me down there to find out what that I want them to do with my body and what I wanted my last meal to be. And at that time, I'm thinking, man, these folks are just going to execute me for something I don't know anything about. I mean, that's just not going to be any justice, But and so I ended up getting a stay of execution because it was premature. I hadn't even went through the appeal process yet, and the state was already trying to kill me. That's because they was trying to hide the truth. They knew what they were doing. And so 3 months after that, they scheduled me another execution date. So much so that my attorney had to file a motion to the district judge and ask the district judge to tell the state, particularly that county, to stop setting these premature execution dates on me. The deal was, or the goal, I suppose, was that if they continue to set the execution dates and my attorneys are not up on their job, they get to kill an innocent man and nobody says anything about it. And that was the position of the state for 18 and a half years of my life, to try to get me in the ground and nobody knows any difference. I'm an innocent man, and they knew it, and they were trying to kill me, and they was trying to do it in a way where no one would second guess their decision. And it was hard, man. It was hard because as I was faced with these execution dates, I was sitting there witnessing other people being executed around me, and it just made me think about my own mortality over and over and over again. And I had just made up my mind, man, whether I come home in a pine box or whether I come home standing up, the world is going to know the truth about my story. They're trying to kill an innocent man.
Yeah, so people that don't know, the man that ended up murdering the family was, I guess he was in prison for something else. He admitted it later. Was he the one, because there was no physical evidence tying you to the crime, there was just a witness or two witnesses. Was he one of the witnesses?
Well, he was the only witness, that they brought there to say that a crime, I was with him when he did a crime. But what the public didn't know is that the same night he lied, when he realized that they were playing these games with him, he tried to tell the truth. He told them from day one, hey, I lied on Mr. Graves. That man is innocent. But they hid that. They went after his wife, held that over his head and said, you continue to lie on Mr. Graves, or we're going to go after your wife because there's no statute of limitation on capital punishment, on the death penalty. So he was put in this position to lie on Mr. Graves to save his wife. And that's what he continued to do, even though he had told them from day one, I lied on this man. This man is innocent.
So the days, describe the days. So you're told to go to see the warden, and the warden is asking you, do they tell you when you're going to be executed? Or are you going to be executed the day you meet with him? What's the time frame, and what's life like? I mean, it's beyond comprehension, but what's that period like when you're told you're going to die?
Yeah, it's about, for your first execution date, it can be up to 90 days out. And after that, then any execution date you get after then, it's like 30 to 40 days out. So the first execution date, it was like about 45, 50 days out when they had told me, right? And so just imagine, for the next 40, 45 days, you got to think about the possibility of the state executing you for the crime you did not commit. I watched men literally go crazy behind that. Just literally go insane, and had really strong cases that should have been a lesser included offense or was just actually innocent. But I watched these men had to deal with the fact that there's an execution date scheduled, and yet they're claiming actual innocence or they're claiming a lesser included offense. But every day you're getting closer to that execution date. And I watch mothers come down there and go crazy watching their kids as the guards come and take them out of there and shackle them to put them in a van to take them off and be executed. Mothers are standing right there and losing their minds. Families are sitting right there and watching all of this. We have lost our way with humanity, man. I am telling you, it is such an inhumane scene to watch men take a healthy young man, shackle him in front of his family, escort him out into a white van, take him over to the gurney and execute him like he's an animal. That's how it is, man. And we have no empathy toward that process.
So you're in prison 18 years, 8 on death row. So you talked about 12 on death row. I'm sorry. So you talk about people going crazy. One of the things that's amazing about you is you didn't go crazy. You stare at the ceiling every night, knowing you didn't commit the crime. How do you not go crazy? How do you not become bitter? Or how do you not become so disillusioned you think, well, I don't know, maybe I did it. Maybe I just accept this, and that's the way it's going to be.
Well, because, at some point you realize that you represent not only yourself, but you represent your mother, you represent the children that you left behind, you represent your family, you represent your community. And I wanted to make sure that that the world knew that my mom didn't raise no murderer, that my children didn't have a father that was a murderer, that the community who supported me all my life did not raise a murderer, that I was still that fine young man that they always supported when it came to sports, when it came to everything in my life. So I felt that, if they're going to kill me, I'm going to go out swinging because I have people that I represent in my life that raised me to be a good person. And I want to make sure that they understand that to the last of my breath that I am that still that man. And no state, regardless of what kind of label they put on me, is going to change that. And so I was rebellious. I was defiant. I was going to prove to the world that my mother did not raise no murderer, that my children's father is not a murderer, that I am still that fine young man that I've always been. And I was determined to prove that.
At any point, did you had 3 kids? You had 3 kids. You didn't get to see them grow up for that period of time. Did anyone ever give up on you that was close to you? Did anyone ever say, I want to believe you, Dad. I want to believe you, son. I want to believe you. I want to believe you. But after this long, did you start to lose connection to people that used to believe you?
No one never stopped believing in me because they just knew who I was. And then on top of that, I was literally at home with my family who could have verified my whereabouts. So
yeah, okay.
I never ran into a situation where people was like, I on the fence about it. People that knew me believed in me because they knew that, hey, my walk was a good walk in life every day. I love people. People love me back. I was not some kind of monster that was drug induced and that need to go out and commit. That's not my life. And people who knew me. So no one ever gave up on me. But there was hope. They started feeling hopeless because they felt felt that they was up against a system that they just couldn't win against, because too many times they have seen an injustice occur in our communities. So they just start feeling hopeless that there was nothing that they could do to prove that their loved one was actually innocent. And that was hard on them, because that also put them in prison and put them on death row right along with me,
So the night the murders took place, I think it's important for people to know how outrageous this case was. You were at home.
Yes, in another town, at home, in another town with my family.
Was that, so you were working at Dell here in Austin for a while, and somewhere, did you lose your job and you're back home? Is that when this happened?
Yeah, so I was working at Dell through their temp agency, and when it played out, I was going back home because I was going to play softball for a company, and the company wanted to hire me so that I could play softball for them. And right in the mix of all of that is when that murder occurred, and someone called my name. It just changed my whole life. But that's what was going on in my life at the time.
The prosecutor who went after you, successfully got you prosecuted, sent to death row, was disbarred. Through the years, did you ever hear from the prosecution's office? Did you ever hear, my bad? I mean, did you ever hear anything? Was there any remorse on the prosecution side? I mean, other than the fact that the guy was ultimately disbarred?
When someone intentionally does something, they don't come back and apologize later for it. And this was intentional. This wasn't a mistake. Wasn't a mistaken identity. They had all the evidence that proved that this man is innocent, but they hid that, and that's what got me back home. Because had for some reason we not found that, I'll be dead today, and the state of Texas would have killed another innocent person. But no, so when someone just deliberately does something like that, they don't come back and apologize. But I've never expected for him to come back and apologize,
There's a part of your story, and I can't remember who it was or how she got involved. Of course, you have the fund for your attorney who kept fighting for you. But wasn't there a prosecutor that was appointed somewhere in your case, somewhere in the process? I remember reading this in Texas Monthly. I thought she was put in place to essentially prove the state's case against you. And she's one who came back that had this famous quote about you, said, "This is the most outrageous travesty of justice I've ever seen." And it turns out someone who was put in a place to make sure you went to death row was the one who said, "We can't do this." Correct? So tell us that story, because that's an amazing part of your story, that because your defense attorney was doing all she could, but didn't things start to turn when this prosecutor said, "We can't do this. This is outrageous"?
And the irony of that is this prosecutor has been known for putting men on death row. Matter of fact, she put more people on death row than some states. So that's why they went out and hired her to come in and try the case. And so according to her, and we've had a conversation, she told me, "Mr. Graves, I came to put you back on death row. I came to dot the I's and cross the T's and make sure you never got off. But when I got looking into this case, I looked into 25 boxes to what they said was evidence." She said, "Mr. Graves, not one piece of paper pointed towards you in this case." She said, "But then I started doing my due diligence. I hired my investigators. I had them go out. I had 5 investigators go out and work this case." She said, "Mr. Graves, I had determined in my own mind that you was innocent, but I didn't want to stop there. I want to call my investigators in one by one to see what they thought." She said, "Mr. Graves, each one of my investigators came in and said, 'This man is innocent. This man is innocent.' That's when we moved to have the prosecutor dismiss these charges against you. But she was definitely not a bleeding heart liberal.
Yeah.
She has been known for putting people on death row."
How long? So what was that conversation like? I mean, did you give her the same story? "I told you I didn't do it. I told you, you got to help me." I mean, how did that conversation go, and how did everything start to turn?
That conversation got emotional. She cried and I cried, because we was dealing with a human life here, and she had seen that I had been wrong, to the point where the various state that she took an oath to serve and protect the rights of people, that this very state was trying to plan to kill an innocent man, and they knew they were, and nobody was trying to do anything about it. So when we had the conversation afterwards, we met in a private place, And when she seen me, she just walked up and she just hugged me, and we cried. And I just told her, thank you for doing the right thing. That's because that's all I ever wanted. Thank you for saving me and my family's life, and thank you for taking us off of death row. And she just told me, she said, it's just so outrageous what they did to you. You know, I just do not understand how they were able to get away with this. And so at that point, you know, we became friends, and we still are friends today. You know, she has a show out called Cold Case. But yeah, we're friends now, man, because she realized what they did to me was just a total injustice. They tried to actually murder me. This state did.
Twice.
Twice. And then turn around and says, okay, now that we, you know, realize we did you wrong, this is how much we think your life is worth, which was a total slap in my face. Because please don't put no dollar amount on my life. Don't tell me that you only thought my life was worth $80,000 a year. And you put me and my family through all that you put me through. My children lost their father. My mother lost her son. Almost drove her insane. I lost 6,440 days of my life. And you told me, and I had 2 execution dates, and I witnessed over 400 men being murdered around me. And you said to me, that's only worth $80,000 a year. A medium to low wage middle class salary. That is a total slap in my face. I preferred you to just come up and shake my hand and apologize to me than to just tell me this is what I think your life is worth. I live with that every day.
Because sadly, cases like yours were so common that prosecutors had wrongly convicted so many people. The state of Texas had to actually come up with a price tag to put. So for people that don't know, there was actual legislation brought in because I remember the days of having these debates about, well, God, what do you owe someone who you've done this to? I mean, there is no price. The state finally settled on $80,000 a year by law, correct?
Yes, by law.
And didn't the state fight you over the money it was supposed to pay you at one point?
Initially, for the first 6 months I come out, man, it was the technicality that they were fighting to try to not pay me. And that was the prosecutor, when they dismissed the case, they didn't use the words actual innocent because they wasn't thinking, they just dismissed the case. So they had to go back now and create another document that just said actual innocent so that I could get compensated. So that process took like 6 months, man. And it was just really like, man, really, after all you've done to me, really, this is what we're going to do? Yeah. I mean, you're going to fight me over this? I mean, really? And so, yeah, they tried to fight me for the first 6 months.
Describe a day in life on death row.
Oh, man. I mean, it's the first thing when someone asks me that, I say, well, let me ask you a question, and that is, what do you consider to be your worst nightmare? And then when they tell me that, I said, well, that was death row every day for me. Yeah. Your worst nightmare. Yeah. That was my day every day. I would wake up at 3 a.m. to bright lights being turned on in my little 6x9 cave to start breakfast. Breakfast would consist of a hard biscuit, two boiled eggs, and maybe some applesauce, right? And after that, you know, they come around at 4:30 to 5 o'clock in the morning and say, oh, you're going to go out for your 1 hour rec. And if I decide to do that, they come back about 5:30 and they start taking us out for rec in the dark. And I only have 1 hour, but you're going out to just another bigger space with nothing in it. You just walk around like you're a caged animal for an hour. And then after that, they bring you back in. They ask you if you want to shower. At some point, they get to you and you get a shower for 7 minutes. They have to handcuff you behind your back, strip you out just to walk you 2 feet into your shower. You take a shower for 7 minutes. You have to hit this little button over and over to keep the water on, because it's not that you turn water on and it stays on and you're able to set the temperature. Don't get it twisted. That's not a luxury hotel down there. What it is down there is that you have to continue to hit this button because the water stays on about 3 seconds. And you just hit it, and it's controlled by the people in the picket. So if it's too cold, you got to ask them, can you turn the water up or whatever? But they control everything. And after that, you go back in your cell and you're in your cell for the rest of the day. So I'm in my cell 23 hours a day through the week. And then on the weekend, it's 24 hours a day until Monday morning.
John McClellan is the co-founder and creator of ATX Hot Sauce in all 50 states, now in several retail outlets as well. So we're going to turn it over to the social media rock chef superstar, and we're going to walk through a few sauces and why you should buy. We've done beet heat, so we're second in line now for the tasting. Don't forget, everyone, go to atxhotsauce.com. So here we go.
All right, so this one is our smoked habanero 5-pepper. We smoke habaneros with ancho, pasilla.
Is that going to hurt?
This one? No,
Yeah.
This one's actually really, really good.
Okay.
This is like your traditional tapatilla, but without the vinegar in it, right? And because of that fermentation process that we've talked about all the time. This one is great on sandwiches, pizzas, things like that. Great on hot wings. I think you're going to really like this one too, especially the smoky flavor with the adobe chipotle and the smoked habaneros. We actually smoked the habaneros before we.
Does that go with the cab?
This would not go with cab. This would go with the great Chenin Blanc, though.
I teed you up with that one.
Yeah, yeah.
That is good. That's good.
Isn't that good? It's just classic take. Well, it's a new take on a classic item. So it's called smoked habanero 5-pepper.
All right, don't forget
One of my
ATX.
favorites.
Don't forget atxhotsauce.com.
And that is your day, man. And you try to make the best of that by reading and writing letters, reading books, hoping someone care enough about you to send you mail, reading newspapers just to try to stay up on what's going on in the world. But you have to, you have to improvise, man, or you can just sit back there and go totally, totally crazy. And that's one day. Yeah.
So what if anything has improved? Your case, your story. There's another local one of Michael Morton, the same thing. Is the shock of your story so impactful that we're now relying more on science? Or are you going to sit here today and say, hey, I got lucky someone cared enough to get me out of this travesty, but the process isn't improving? Or tell us that it is improving, if so, how?
It's the latter. I was a lottery pick. I wasn't the only innocent person on death row. I was a lottery pick. They could have picked another innocent person. I would be dead today, and you be talking to him. I was literally a lottery pick, and that is still what's going on. The good thing is that because of social media and people more engaged around criminal reform, it has put the spotlight on it. So it slowed down executions, because we were executing people 1, 2, 3 times a week, sometimes twice a day. But because the spotlight has been put on the injustice around this death penalty, it has slowed down execution. So we have been in the last couple of years executing 2, 3 people a year for Texas. That's amazing. That's just like abolishing the death penalty in Texas.
Yeah,
so
right.
So the spotlight has really kind of slowed things down, but things are still the same, man. The laws on the book hasn't really changed. The Michael Morton Act did a wonderful thing for everybody in terms of transparency around the evidence. But at the end of the day, man, they can circumvent it. They continue to circumvent it because for them, it's about a win.
Why not have it? I mean, I realize that maybe the science hasn't caught up, or maybe it's too expensive. But when it comes to a death penalty or a murder case, why not absolutely mandate that there's the science and the DNA for any prosecution?
Man, I totally agree with you. I think that should be absolutely a mandate. I think that on each side, every rock should be turned over to find out what the truth is, because there's a life hanging in the balance, and you just cannot play. It's not like locking him up for 10 and 15 years. You're talking about killing this person. So you absolutely correct. If we're going to have the death penalty, then there should be mandates put in place on both sides so that both sides can be working toward the truth, because what lies in the balance is a human life.
Is there a day that you remember the worst day? I mean, obviously you're set to die, and there's the impact, the impact of that. Was there a time when you said, I give up, this is the worst day, this is it? Is there a moment? Is there a letter? Is there no one coming? What moment made you as down as you ever were?
There were many moments, man. Just witnessing the inhumanity around me daily. Just listening to young kids come down there, 16, 17 years old, never dated in their life, never had any responsibility in their life. And they made what may have made a mistake for 5 minutes, and we decided to kill them. And I watch them come down there in 2 years, that's totally insane. And they're going crazy, and they're beating on the doors, and they're busting their heads open, and they're trying to hang themselves, and they're cutting their throats, and they're slitting their wrists. This is reality down there, and they're overdosing on medication. And it just gets to you, piles up on you and piles up on you. And sometimes I remember at night, man, I would lay down and tears would just roll down my face. And I didn't care if I woke up the next day or not. I was just tired of it, man. I was just tired of living like that. Well, tired of existing like that, for no reason other than just because somebody decided to lie on me, and besides a prosecutor decided to seek a conviction and not justice. And because of that, I was a pawn in a big game. And here I am on death row for a crime I know absolutely nothing about. I'm not a murderer. I'm not a criminal. But this is how I'm living. And it's hard. It's hard to live like that every day. And so there were many nights that I just wanted to just say, hey, man, I don't care if I wake up tomorrow.
Did you ever try to kill yourself?
Oh, no. I was too rebellious. I mean, I wanted the world to know what was happening to me. Even when I got down, I knew that I still had an obligation to make sure that the truth was told and that the truth was known so that we can make changes. It never got to that point for me. But now I see many people around me. Many people around me gave up. Many people around me dropped their appeals and just wanted to die. And it happened. And the state was more than happy to oblige them. I witnessed that all the time,
When there was a time, of course, it backfired for prosecutors, but of course you get reelected by being tough on crime. You get reelected by putting people away. That's how you get reelected. Is the public more aware and the voter more aware that the voter's now holding prosecutors to a higher standard? Do you think that's the case after your story?
Well, I believe the worm is definitely turning, because I've seen a lot of progressive prosecutors get elected over the last several years, running on the criminal reform. So I definitely think the worm is turning, but it hasn't turned enough. That's too much politics in our criminal system, right? I mean, you getting elected, you getting promoted by being tough on crime, by having so many convictions. I mean, for example, the prosecutor who prosecuted me, after he prosecuted me, they gave him prosecutor of the year. He just sent an innocent man to death row, and he got prosecutor of the year.
He was ultimately disbarred.
And now, and let me just say, I disbarred his ass. Excuse my French. I won't always say that, but I disbarred him. I used the law to my advantage. They used the law to wrongfully convict me. I used the law to rightfully disbar him. But yeah, the incentives
had you not, I'm curious, this is a disturbing question on top of everything else. Had you not pushed to go then after you're exonerated and released to go back after him, do you think he'd still be getting elected? He'd still be the prosecutor?
I think that, I think he had eventually retired before I went after him, but he was training other prosecutors, right? On ethics. And he would have still been doing that. The prosecutor who had broke all the rules to execute an innocent man was now training prosecutors on ethics. Man. And so when I disbarred him, when the state disbarred him, I think that was a win for all prosecutors who want to do the right thing. Anthony, I really believe so.
Yeah. I mean, from what I know of your case, there was no physical evidence.
There was nothing.
I mean, we can rightfully rail on the prosecutor, but did you look at the jury and think, how?
I mean, the jury didn't look like me. That's number one. They did not look like me. So they didn't come up in the same neighborhoods I came up in. Wherever they came from, they did not relate to me. And the fact of the matter is, when I looked at that jury and I realized that jury did not look like me, and I realized that jury was paying more attention to that prosecutor than anybody else in that room, I knew what I was faced with. Oh. I knew that this was going to be the long game, that I wasn't going home like my family thought I was. That these people were, as a matter of fact, two jurors come out later on and said that they didn't even believe that I was guilty, but they still voted to convict me because they thought my attorneys were boring, and they felt like if they convicted me, that I would get a new trial and I could get some new attorneys. That was the mindset of two of my jurors who said I didn't believe he was guilty, but I voted to convict him anyway. You voted to convict and sentence me to death, not believing that I was guilty. but you didn't look like me, right? So no harm, no foul. That's how I take that. You didn't look like me. So it was okay for you to sentence me to death, hoping that I just get some other attorneys and continue to fight. You didn't even look at the fact that you didn't believe that I was guilty. You saying you didn't believe I was guilty, but you still convicted me.
Yeah.
Why?
Has there ever been an answer to that? Has there ever been an answer to that?
There's never been an answer to that. And I just like to ask the state, why? Why do we allow that to happen? Why do we allow people to sit up on a jury who've already predetermined the decision? Why aren't we not vetting them more? Why aren't we not training them before trial even starts so that they make sure that they understand what their role really are? Because their role is the most important role in there.
Yeah.
So why are they the least informed? We have to correct that. That's why we're getting these wrongful convictions. We're taking 12 people off the street and just say, make the best judgment without really training them on how to get to that judgment. Right? Then we keep evidence out from them. We fight to suppress things. We fight. I mean, and they don't know. They're laborers. They don't know nothing about the law. Why did you suppress that? Well, I don't know. You can't think about that. Oh, well, we don't think. Then all of a sudden, they're left to make the most important decision without all the evidence. And you get a wrongful conviction. That's our system, and it needs to change.
Do you think the public, the voting public, thinks, because the argument is, this is the legal argument, you know this, it's a better system that lets a guilty person who did commit the crime go rather than killing the innocent person. I mean, if we're going to make a mistake, you'd prefer to make it that way. Do you think the public accepts your argument that we have executed an innocent person and the public is at some level okay with it and just says, that's kind of law of averages. We're going to end up making that mistake?
Yeah, I think the public is that, it didn't happen to me. I think the public is sort of, it's the law. And whatever the law is, being that I'm a law-abiding citizen, I support the law. And I get that. Yeah. I do too. In the perfect world, I wouldn't have no complaints. Yeah. But we're not living in a perfect world. We don't have a perfect system. And we're killing innocent people. And it's not your problem until it knocks on your door. So I get it. I'm totally for it until it happens to me. I get it. But I would say to you who thinks that way, you got to get out of that mindset because it can and it will one day maybe happen to you. Yeah. I'm telling you that. So don't think that because you believe in the death penalty that it exempts you. I never had an opinion one way or the other until it knocked on my door and tried to take my life twice for something I knew absolutely nothing about. And I was with my family who could have vouched for me, and that wasn't enough. So I'm just saying that, yeah, I get where the public is, because, hey, for example, if somebody do something to my family, I want him caught, arrested, even sentenced to death, whatever. That's fine. But those are my emotions. My emotions should not govern us as a society. It should come from a rational place that includes all of us, not just me because I'm hurt. And that's what we have to get away from. We always talk about the victim, but we're creating victims when we get it wrong. You created a whole set of victims with my family. Never once did you say, I'm going to give them 1.4 million too. I'm going to give your son 1.4 million. I'm going to give everybody that I hurt 1.4 million. You didn't. So if you're not willing to pay everybody for what you put them through, then stop it. Let's get serious about reforming it so that if you do send someone to death, you can be 99.9% sure that we dotted all the I's and crossed the T's, and we can say that we got the right person. But until we get to that point, we need to stop killing, man, because you're killing people's family members, and they could be innocent. That's how loose the death penalty is. I was at home with my family, man. I was laying on the floor on the boat with my girlfriend all night. My sister was home, my brother was home, and yet I end up on death row for a crime that happened in a town I don't even go to. I didn't even know the people. The people didn't even know me. I'm a good person. I was always a good person, but yet I end up on death row, and we was all nonchalant about it. We never asked the question. We never challenged the evidence. We just took it at face value because we want to trust in our system so much. But we cannot do that anymore. We cannot no longer afford to just trust our system blindly. We can't. Too many people innocently are losing their freedoms and their lives. And we're not saying let guilty people go. We're saying make the system fair for all of us. That's all we're saying. I'm not here to advocate abolishing the death penalty. I don't, if that's what you want, I'm just saying don't kill innocent people. You tried to kill me, and I ain't did nothing to you. I love my country, but you tried to kill me.
Does it, when it's done right, when it's not your story, and I think you would admit there are terrible people on death row that have done the things they're accused of doing. They're monsters. They've murdered people. The guy that killed the people you were accused of killing was put to death. Does it work even when it gets it right? Is it really a deterrent? I mean, can you tell, having been near other death row inmates and people that have been put to death, can you tell the taxpayer, yes, that person is a monster. Yes, they should pay the price for the crimes. We've got to find a way to make it right. Can you tell the taxpayer that the death penalty is a deterrent?
I can honestly tell you that the death penalty is not a deterrent.
Okay.
It is a waste of taxpayers' dollars.
Okay.
That's what it is. It is a total waste of taxpayers' dollars. Why do I say that? Because I met the men. I was living with the men that we all sentenced to death and that we was all okay with it. And when I met those men, they did not have drugs in their system. They did not have a gun in their hand. They did not have any kind of weapons. And guess what I found out? I found out that they loved their family, that they loved their children, that they laughed, that they cried, that they had the same kind of emotions that I did. They was willing to help me when I first got down there. They was willing to tell me about all the rules so I didn't get myself in trouble. And these were the same people that we said need to be disposed. And I'm saying to myself, wait a minute. So we got all these people down here, but here's the thing, Jeff, but we execute them during times when you're busy, or we was executing them late at night. So how is we talking about this being a deterrent and we execute them in the quiet of the night or when nobody's paying attention? And yet we come around and say, oh, but that's a deterrent. Well, how is it a deterrent? Nobody even knowing that you're executing someone until they read it in the back pages of the news a week later.
Yeah.
It's not a deterrent. It's not a deterrent. It's a waste of taxpayers' dollars.
Tell people what you're doing now and how they can follow you.
Oh, man, I'm doing so much now. First of all, I am working at the Harris County Public Defender's Office. Can you imagine? I'm working with the system now, man.
Good for you.
So I'm the community
Good
liaison.
for us. No, I should say good for us. Good for the people of Harris County. Good.
I'm reminding everybody of why we have to do it right. I'm making my face known around the city, right? So I work for that. I've done my book, man. I'm a published author also. My book, Infinite Hope, that came out on Beacon Press. People can get it from Amazon.com or anywhere at a retail bookstore. I have my podcast, Infinite Hope, that I just launched. So I have a couple of episodes out. And, man, I'm out here still fighting the system, trying to reform it, man, to make sure that it is fair for all of us, That's it, particularly young people. So I'm working with the Juvenile Justice Department down here, the probation department, trying to put in a program that will help save our children. It's called Save Time. And what I'm trying to do is create a vision for the judge to see the person as the entire human being, that child from where he come from to how he end up in front of you, so that when you do assess a sentence, that you'll assess it to where you have in mind how to get this kid back to be one day a successful, free adult, because that's where we should want him to get. So instead of just throwing him away, I want to make sure you know who he really is. So I'm out trying to create these social bio profiles for juveniles so that the judge can really understand who that kid is in front of them, because they don't really know that kid been molested, came from poverty, nobody ever cared about him, and now he's in front of you, and you say throw away the key. Come on, we can do better than that as Americans. We don't have to lock our children up.
You know what? Your podcast, Infinite Hope, and the term, I mean, it's amazing. And you could probably give everyone a lesson. In fact, I'm gonna make you give everyone a lesson, because if there's anyone that should be bitter and angry and give up or be hateful or spiteful, it's you. And there's people that go through a lot. Everyone goes through a lot less than you, and yet is angry and full of revenge and hate. How do you just in 30 seconds to a minute tell someone to reconcile the whole concept of infinite hope?
infinite hope is this here. You can't be angry and live life in the best way. You have to give that to God. And you have to stay hopeful. That's the only chance you have of getting out of any hole that you find yourself in, is to be hopeful and to know that this too shall pass one day. So, and while you're in that hole, learn as much as you can of what you're going through so that you can come out of it and share it with the rest of the world so that we all can heal together. That's infinite hope, man. Give us all hope through your story.
Anthony, good seeing you, man.
Man, like always, Jeff, always. Keep up the great work, man.
All right, take care.
From the Hot Pie Media Studios in Austin, Texas, it's the Jeff Ward Show. Listen at jeffwardshow.com.